Okay. Well, since it's lunchtime, I'll thank you guys for joining. If you're joining for lunch. So hi everyone, thank you. I'll get started now, if that's okay. Nearly just went into it. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining today's webinar. We're going to get started. My name is Kimbra, and I'm part of the team here at Oxford Professional Education. And just a bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. And today we have another interesting webinar hosted by Robyn, of course. And she'll be covering how AI in GA4, it's like Google Analytics, is changing the way we access and use data. So Robyn, I'll hand over to you now.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was nerding out about how I think this is the way that we solve a lot of problems when it comes to understanding the data that we actually have access to now. Because when it comes to GA4, this is a platform that has had to try and keep up, not only with the changes in technological kind of advancement that come with the kind of way that we access the internet and the capabilities of the things that we have on the internet, but what we are also stating and seeing moving forward is the fact that the data that we have is so expansive that we collect that it is a full-time job to truly actually understand the nitty-gritty of that. But as GA4 has evolved and our AI accessibility has evolved, we all of a sudden have access to aspects of retrieval that we never have had before, and aspects of insight interpretation that we have never had before, right? So I am going to, for the first half, we're going to talk through GA4, the journey of GA4, what AI looks like within GA4. And then what I'm also going to do is in the second half, if you have access to your own GA4, you can whip it out and we can follow along with me. So I will show you exactly different aspects of AI that you can access immediately when it comes to kind of GA4 use and kind of data retrieval within that space and within that kind of world. Yeah. So let's start right at the beginning. And realistically, we are tired. Yeah, we are tired of digging through report after report when it comes to trying to find answers regarding our website, our apps, and our kind of marketing overall, right? Our website holds so much information that is accessible through GA4, but it is hidden behind layers and layers of interconnected kind of reporting, funnel exploration, outcome monitoring that we realistically, as our roles have changed as marketers and analysts have kind of all come under the same boat, we need to access these spaces quicker and work through these things quicker than ever before. And if you have ever opened kind of GA4, stared at a report, and thought, realistically, I just need to know what happened and what to do about it without the time consuming aspects of report creation and analysis, this session is for you. And I'm not going to cover everything in GA4 today. I can't in an hour. I would love to be able to give you the wisdom and insights of everything within that 1 hour, but I am going to cover the aspects that you need to understand to be able to go away after this session and truly utilize GA4. And we're going to look at specifically at what has changed regarding AI accessibility inside the tool. And you can try it yourself. We're going to try it live together today. So we're going to go into kind of GA4 and the things that have changed, and I'm going to talk you through the foundational AI knowledge that you need to understand what we're talking about and why that's important and what it does for us, as I always do. And then we're going to move into that workshop session. If you at any point have any questions, please put them into the chat. I will, if I can, answer them directly at that point or um, make sure that we get them answered at the end. And no question is not a good question in these spaces. And I recognize that this might be some people's first view of GA4 and moving into that world, or you may be a seasoned pro and you're looking to just do things quicker. I can manage all those different types of questions. So there's no fear from me if you have any questions about today. So we're going to kind of look at how AI is built into GA4. We're going to look at new ways to reach insights. We're not going to build reports today. We're not. But we're going to look at how we can look at insights and gain information from conversational discussions with GA4. We're going to look at what automated insights mean and what predictive metrics we have at our disposal directly in GA4. And we're going to look at this discussion where we're not just spending time retrieving in GA4 anymore. We're looking at interpretation. We're not even looking at analysis. We're looking at how can we quickly utilize AI embedded tools within GA4 to give us a resolve or a potential resolve for our problem or the question that we are looking at, right? And then we're going to look at everyday kind of practical examples. In the kind of follow along, we're going to look at how we can talk and ask GA4 a plain English question. We're going to look and understand about how we read automated insights within the kind of space. And we're going to build a predictive kind of audience. And then we're going to turn one finding into one action because that's the easiest way for you to consider how to embed GA4 use into your kind of business decisions, into your marketing, reporting, all that kind of good stuff that GA4 is built for. And we're just not using it to its kind of maths kind of potential. So I have a quick kind of timeline to go through with you because who here has come from the world of UA, not just GA4, Universal Analytics, which feels like a time gone by when we look at kind of how quickly this platform has changed. But if we look at 2005 to 2012, Google Analytics was classed as a website tool. Yeah, it had classic analytics and then it moved into kind of universal analytics in 2012. And it was built around something called sessions. And these dynamics, this data, was purely things like visits, page views, and bounce rate. Yeah. It measured a website at that point like a single self-contained thing. It did okay. Yeah, it was a great free tool for us to say if our social media was doing the thing we needed it to do, moving people to a web page because our page views went up. Yeah, it was the start of that connection. In 2019, though, the cracks began to show. Yeah, because at this time we had all of these other digital artifacts that were being built. So we had mobile apps, single page apps, multi-device journeys, and they didn't fit this session model very well. All of a sudden, we couldn't answer the questions that we had been able to answer for a few years. And Google's answer here was to build the app and the web property. So yeah, so we have these two kind of aspects that start to link under your domain. But it was still built on the same event-based foundation. So users' behavior across an app and a website could be now stitched into one picture instead of two separate places. So we're getting more data. Yeah, we're getting better data. We're getting a better journey. We're pulling things together. Now, October 2020, GA4 launches. And this is where things really changed for analytics and accessible analytics from our website. And this is where kind of every event such as a page view, a click, a purchase, becomes one consistent data type, whether it happens in an app or a browser. And this is a big shift. This was the start of the big structural shift that means everything else kind of happened on top of that. And what this meant is it standardized behavior. And that meant that every behavior was classed as an event. And what that meant was we could start feeding that data into machine learning models because they had something clean to learn from. Yeah. So every action somebody took on your app or your website was classed as an event. And this was cleaned data that meant that different models could be introduced into how we analyze and look at data in GA4. So 2020, 2023, we're all still struggling with the GA4 changeover as organizations. There was a big kind of shift. And actually what was happening was that Google was layering something called analytics intelligence into GA4. And that is where we first started to see automated insights. Yeah. And the first predictive metrics were added. So purchase probability and churn probability. It was rough. Yeah, it was early, but it was the foundation for everything that we will be covering today. So July 2023, we said goodbye to Universal Analytics. Everybody had to move over to GA4, and this forced familiarity. Yeah. And it's really only from that point on that GA4's AI layer actually started to become real world applicable because we were all using it. Yeah. So we started to have a unified understanding of things like events on the website. So 2024, kind of Gemini arrives. So Google starts writing its Gemini models into GA4 rather than directly kind of leaving the space. So you could use like Gemini inside your Google Suite. And then kind of where it leaves us today is that we now have a tool that started as a session counter for websites 16 years later is a platform where we can type, why did signups drop on Tuesday, and get an answer instead of a report that we have to build. Yeah. And the events-based redesign in 2020 was the unglamorous kind of foundational work that made the AI layer actually possible. And this is kind of where, if you look at kind of any rhetoric around GA4, that was the confusing time for us as users. But now you can see why it was done, how it was done, because it laid the foundation for us to understand and clean the data, for us all to be forced onto a certain model type, which now gives us real world applicable insights. Yeah. So that's kind of where we've come from. And getting an answer out of GA4 used to be hard work. It required a lot of understanding of Google Analytics, a lot of things like data interpretation, even SQL kind of building, and taking the data, potentially putting it somewhere else to manipulate it so it made sense. So you could start to understand, why did signups drop off on a Tuesday? Yeah. Now, to build that report, we needed to understand all of the aspects of the information that GA4 can collect. Are we collecting it? And then what reports linked to that data? Yeah. So the old way was that we decided which report answers our question. We open up explorations, we choose our dimensions and metrics, we apply our filters, we wait for the reports to be generated, and then we sit and interpret that table ourselves. Realistically, 10 to 30 minutes per question for anyone not fluent in GA4. But the new way is that we type the question we converse, we discuss with GA4 in plain English. The system then chooses the right report, the right metrics, and filters behind the scenes and returns an answer in under a minute. So, analytics used to be its own big job. Yeah. For most of Google Analytics life, reading it, understanding it, implementing it was a specialism. Universal Analytics, sorry, not Unalytics. Maybe they should have called it that. That sounds like a better platform name. Rewarded people who understood things like sessions, goals, segments, and custom reports. The kind of knowledge that you have to build up over months with a dedicated analytics person on the team or an agency. And if you weren't that person, you either waited for them to pull the report or generally people avoided the tool. Yeah, we avoided that tool altogether and we kind of worked off gut feel. That's generally, I've been there. I've been sat in those rooms. And that division made sense when marketing roles were narrower than they currently are, and business analytics roles were narrower than they currently are. A content person wrote content, a paid media person ran ads, the analytics person turned data into answers for both of them. Nobody minded that because that's how agency and roles were kind of created. But that's not the job anymore. AI is changing things. And a modern marketer or a modern analyst, especially at a small agency, is expected to do much more of the cycle, not just that end reporting. And the problem realistically is that GA4's old interface didn't shrink to match. The reporting structure still assumes that we have specialist time and background knowledge. Yeah. That is where they are using AI to fill the gap for us. And we now need to understand what those different aspects truly mean for us to be able to access data without having that dedicated person or the time to build up that knowledge. And the AI layer in GA4 isn't replacing the analytics special role. It's replacing the need for one for every question. There's still going to be really detailed things that you're not really going to be able to prompt to get back. And I don't want you to have to feel realistically that you have to go away and learn GA4 because there's so much within this platform that you can actually kind of access and understand. And AI is great at doing the boring stuff. I will say that like over and over again, hand over fist, I will tell you that. It is good at grunt work. It can take data and give you patterns. It can collect things and give you reports. What it cannot do, though, is know how to answer the right question. That is still on you. Yeah? So the work that's left, deciding what a number means and what to do about it, that boring grunt work, was never the specialist skill. And I want you to really understand that. That was always judgment. That's us asking the question of GA4 and these AI models to get the right response. So you were never supposed to need a specialist when using GA4 to know how your own marketing's performing, but GA4 has always made you feel like it did because of its complexity and its heritage and the way that realistically it's like not really intuitive. But that's the part that is actually changed. Yeah, that's the part that is different now moving forward. So the three things that we're kind of going to look at today are the different layers of AI that live inside GA4. So the first thing that we're going to look at is our Ask Advisor. So this is where kind of it's the chat assistant that answers a question that we already have in our head. Yeah. We're going to look at our automated insights. These raise a question that you may not have thought to ask. And then our predictive metrics that answer a question about the future. So who is likely to buy? Who is likely to leave before it potentially happens? So the AI layers within GA4 now work three different jobs if we want to frame it like that. One answers what we ask. One taps us on the shoulder and says, have you seen this? Have you noticed this? This is changing. And one looks ahead, and today we're going to look at all three. Yeah. So ask advisor. So if has that changed to GA4? Yes, look at how magic that was. That changed directly to GA4. So if we sit in GA4 for a second, if you go and press this home page, this will always take you back to the snapshot, your starting point of GA4. Now, Ask Advisor sits in this section here. Yeah. So Ask Advisor is our deep dive. Think of it like your guide. It has that sparkly kind of beautiful icon in the top right. If we press it, it opens a prompt menu, which we are all very familiar with. This acts exactly how we interact with Claude, how we interact with ChatGPT. We input our prompt into this box at the bottom, it turns it into its own language through tokenization, and then delivers us back the answer. Yeah? So it's built on Gemini's kind of model, but it sits inside GA4 as a chat interface. So it's basically Gemini sat within your GA4. And this kind of allows us to type a question in a conversational way and for us to get an answer with a chart or a link to the report that it answered it from. It has rolled out under the name Analytics Advisor. Yeah. And it has only just kind of reached general availability in English language. So in May 2026, it has now kind of started to roll into this Ask Advisor, but you will still see that it is still in beta. It is still being updated with functionality and accessibility. So what I want you to kind of recognize is this is still in training. Yeah. There are limitations to what it can pull and how it understands your question. It has no reset button. So the way that you would start a new chat, if it gets confused or you've asked it several complex questions and it's kind of having a sit down and it's not really moving itself forward in the conversation that you're having with it, is you would need to refresh your page. Yeah. So it's gated also by eligibility. So this, in this instance, only talks to the one property I give it access to. So it's just my kind of testing account for everburn.agency. So it can only answer information about data pulled into this property. One thing that I'll also note is it's free. So whereas you have to pay for things like ChatGPT and Claude to get analysis and to get it to work for you, it's now free. It doesn't cost you anything to access this AI support. So let's ask a question. Let's think. It gives us some kind of ways that we can kind of work with GA4. So let's ask it, how many users did I have last week? And what it will do is it will analyze my request like any AI property and any AI support. It is telling me what it is doing. I'm looking up, and then it gives me the full answer to my question. I didn't need to know what report I needed to pull to find that out. I didn't need to know where to find that report. I didn't need to know what metric I needed to track in a funnel to access that information. It knew from the question I asked what information it needed to access to give me that answer. Yeah. And what it also does here, as you can see, is it gives me a user attributes overview. So then what it'll do is it'll go into detail about those 22 active users. Yeah. So as you can see, it gave me the data that it pulled to answer my question. So let's have a look at another one. How many new users have I acquired this year? So again, it is analyzing my request, understanding what report it needs to go away and look at. It's fetching that data and then pulling it in. So I've had 668 new users into this property. And again, what I can do is press this button here, and it takes me directly to the report that proves to me that has happened. Yeah. Now, if we kind of look and kind of ask it a complex question, where we start to kind of think about the business needs for specific reporting, I could ask, what was the result from organic social media over the past quarter? And how can I improve this? Yeah, conversion. So what we need to start doing there is building out questions. So it is now looking at a complex collection of data. It is not one report. It is allowing itself to take aspects of different reports. It showed there. It showed me what it's doing. It's pulling that together, giving me the data, taking that data, and also looking at how I can improve that without me ever touching a report. Yeah. So it's still thinking. I may have asked it a very complex question. So what it has done first is it's shown me its thinking. So these are the organic social channels kind of generated that many sessions. Why the conversion is showing a 0. It's because there's no tracking on the buttons or anything like that. And also low traffic volume in this kind of testing area. It's giving me the kind of top 10 event names by event count. And what it has then done is taken my data in response to my question and given me direct ways that I can improve my organic social conversions if that is important to my business. Yeah. So it's told me that I need to fix my how I measure it. So make sure that I've got tagging implemented in the right kind of places. It's given me the kind of best content, best practices for kind of businesses. And then it's also given me a way that I can follow up by. Now, a really interesting section here is these are all the references that it has used to utilize and gain and create that outcome for me. So what it also allows you to do is double check if you trust its output. Whereas ChatGPT and things like that don't necessarily give you the output that you expect. The thing with this is it is giving you all of the data it has utilized without you having to go and pull any report. It has given you the information it has used to give you the kind of updates and the recommendations with their direct links. So I can go away and double check if that is the most up to date, or I should or shouldn't follow that advice depending on my sector. So it's incredibly thorough. It's driving a way for us to simply coordinate and talk conversationally to this space without having to understand which report links to what, how to access that data, how to generate those reports, and actually just ask questions. So then if I reset the kind of space, I can say, how can I improve my website to convert better in terms of the call to action, book a call? So if you have a specific business question that you have and you need to answer, then what you can do is simply ask. Yeah. What I will say is it is slightly skewed in the fact that GA4 is slightly skewed anyway, the way it like kind of gives out reporting information, but it gives us a place to start. We no longer have to spend the time on that retrieval. Yeah. But again, as you can see, when I asked basic questions, I got a basic response. I just got the number. I have to understand what I am trying to understand when it comes to the data in GA4. So if you have a specific business problem that is linked to the website or the movement of people through the website, you can simply start to ask that kind of question in this space. So that is how we use the Ask Advisor. The one thing that you can do is look at your history. So you can press history here, and that is how you view your previous chats. So if you do want to kind of save it and go back to it, you can do that there. It has a short window of memory though. It's not like ChatGPT. This is designed for short, quick kind of processes. Yeah. So let's go back to this one. So the next one is something called automated insights. So automated insights. So GA4 starts to learn a normal baseline for your website. So over time, it starts to take the information and put it together and develop a process that means that when it starts to deviate from that, it starts to kind of give you information. It starts to flag that to you. And the value in this is, I would say, the speed of detection. So a dip caught on day one of a campaign is fixable. 3 weeks later, when you may have time to export the reports and sit and analyze them, that is where you kind of lost revenue and lost purpose in some of those spaces. So cards that appear on GA4's home screen on their own without being asked are your insights. And they flag things like traffic spikes, conversion drops, or unusual kind of shifts in the space. And what it does is when it's things in your website start to go over or under the expected range, it tells you. And again, the value here is speed of detection. And this is the older side of GA4's kind of AI layer. It's always kind of done this. And this compressed time to detection, so a regression caught on the day it happens is recoverable, but the same regression caught later is not, is the key to this. And I'll show you that it does this automatically. So if you press home, it starts to suggest the insights here. Yeah, so that's one place that you will start to see that. The next thing is that you can go to this section and kind of look at your insights that are generated from your general space. So the way that you will always be able to access your insights is you press home and you go to the bottom and your suggested insights are already kind of all here. And what you can also do is create. So you can also ask it to look at something on repeat. So if you want it to do it daily, if we have a change in kind of an audience. So if I'm doing a campaign that is designed to hit people over the age of 40, I can have a checker that is, if anybody over the age of 40 is viewing it, it collects that information into that insight there. What you can also do is any place that there is a report, you can press this button here. And what that does is it starts to generate insights based on the place we are. So wherever we are in GA4, if you press this magical button, it's again sparkly. I don't know why Google feels the need to add sparkles to all of its AI, but that's an easy way to find it on any of the screens. Is you press this button here and then you can press basic intelligence and it will start to give you insights directly linked to the page that we are on. But if I change that page and I press insights again, the questions are different. It will always react to the place you are in GA4. So insights is great if you don't really know what question you want to potentially ask. It's a great way to start looking at different things like user acquisition. Okay, on this page, I can see very quickly how many users from organic search. I press that, it's quickly brought me that information. Okay, so social isn't really doing very well. There's not much coming in there. Let's look at traffic analysis. What's the trend of monthly users kind of last year? And then it will pull that information. So we kind of had a peak in July, and then it's kind of come down here. Again, a report that I did not have to create or understand how to create. I simply said, okay, the insights that are available to me in this area of GA4 are this. Okay, I'll have a look. And what you can also do is share that report if you want to, or you can download it as a downloadable file. At any point, if you are lost, always click the home button, take yourself back to that first instance, that first space, and then you can start your insights again from the beginning. This is a really interesting button. So you can press this, and what you can do is start to create notes in your GA4. If multiple people access it, all have different colors. That's a great way to do it. Or different teams could have different colors. And what this does is it starts to also tell GA4 the kind of information you're the most interested in. So if I can put like acquisition numbers, I could add some information, I can put my date range. And what that does is it then starts to, again, give a baseline to GA4. So that's something that you always are going to check. So it'll just start to pull that out and put it here for you over time. So that it gives you insights wherever you are. This allows you to talk conversationally regarding a business problem that you are trying to solve or have visibility on. That's the difference. Insights explains about where you are and what you can understand from where you are in GA4, whereas the Ask Advisor allows you to be much more in-depth and complicated in what you ask it. Caveat again, you have to understand a little bit about GA4 to be able to ask the right questions, potentially in Ask Advisor. Whereas Insights gives you the information of where you are in GA4 and what you can easily understand. So that's the difference there. We then have predictive metrics. Now, this is where we start to ask it about things like purchase probability, churn probability, predicted revenue. And what that does is per user, it starts to collect that information and then offer it to you so that you can start to think about if nothing changes, this is the probability of things that will happen on my website. So this is the aspect that sits within machine learning, and it's one of the reasons that we standardized all of that behavior when we moved from Universal Analytics to GA4. That was the foundation of this. So machine learning scores are calculated per user, and this runs quietly in the background and can be pulled into reports or into Ask Advisor. And this kind of allows us to do things like what are our likely 7-day purchases? What audience are likely churning in the next X amount of time? So that we can then run campaigns which are based upon that data. So every day, GA4 calculates the purchase probability, so the likelihood a user converts in the next 7 days, the churn probability, the likelihood a user who was active in the last 7 days won't return, and predictive revenue. So these this data, though, isn't available to everyone because it needs a minimum of 1,000 users. Yeah. So this is where we start to need more traffic to understand. But if we go into our Ask Advisor, I can put kind of what is my churn probability and what can I do to improve this? So it can pull that data in because it understands it. It's been tracking it since we started our GA4. And what we can do is start to understand why these people are potentially not coming back to complete or not doing anything on our website and are just leaving and not really completing anything. So this is kind of the churn probability. So this estimates the likelihood that a user who was active in the last 7 days will not be active within the kind of next 7 days. And how do I improve it? So I can follow these to then improve my churn probability over time. So understanding that these types of predictive metrics are happening anyway within the AI machine learning layer, we can start to ask like our analytics support, our Ask Advisor, to bring them in to our questions so that we can start understanding what is going to happen in the future, not just what is happening right now and what has happened before, but what is going to happen if nothing changes on our website based on this machine learning model. So this is something that's really interesting to start to kind of take into account and understand, because realistically, when you start to be able to predict, you can then impact that prediction. So if you've got a high purchase probability, wonderful. There's something going on that's really good. You're driving the right people to do the right things, to take the right action. If you have a high churn probability, that means there is something that is not bringing people back into your world. They are not completing. The call to actions are off. So then you can start making those decisions. And because we can ask directly in Ask Advisor, it means that we get the kind of ways that we can improve that really quickly. So the old way was that we had to decide which report answered our question. We had to build a custom exploration. We had to choose all those dimensions, those metrics, and those filters. We had to wait, then interpret it, and it can be 10 to 30 minutes per question. But the new way is we type the question in plain English. Yeah, GA4 chooses the right report behind the scenes. It answers with a chart in under a minute, and we can focus then on what that answer means. And our time goes to judgment, not mechanics. Yeah. So for years, the hard part of analytics was getting the data out and doing all of these kind of things. But actually, the taking the answer and focusing on what that answer means and what we can do with that answer, that is actually the job. The retrieval is not necessary anymore. Retrieval is now largely automated, as you've seen with the things that we've gone through today. We ask and the information appears. Yeah. And interpretation is still entirely human, though, deciding whether that matters, why it has changed, and what action it warrants is the experience and expertise that AI cannot move forward with. Yeah. And also, this changes kind of what being good at analytics means for us. Less about kind of understanding GA4, more about understanding business judgment and what we actually need to be able to move forward and ask the right questions, to have eyes and visibility on kind of what this means for us as organizations. And this is kind of the conceptual heart of everything. Retrieval is now largely automated, but interpretation is still and will remain entirely human. And that second part was actually always the job of analytics. And realistically, now that's the only part that we've got to do to understand the consolidated retrieval of information rather than to waste our time understanding how to access that information. So it could look like on a Monday, you could check in and ask advisor, how did organic traffic perform last week compared to the week before? And then have that information to move forward in the week. You can notice more things because there's an automated insight flagging a conversion rate drop on mobile, for example. And then because that insight has been flagged, you can make action or take action on that week. Or you can kind of build a predictive audience of users with high purchase probability and share it with clients or kind of your sales team or your own outreach so you can prioritize. You can prioritize your kind of targeting and your outreach overall. But what I wanted to do is just quickly, while I have you, I'm gonna do a whistle stop tour of the different reports in GA4 so you understand what you can ask. Yeah. So this is kind of like your kind of too long didn't read of GA4. Yeah. So if we look at the reports snapshot, that gives a fast whole property check so you can spot anything unusual. Yep, so it's your real-time overview, everything that is happening right now. The real-time aspects of this confirm things like tracking is working and it's useful for just checking in. Are things actually being recorded? So that is what they are good for. If we look at acquisition, acquisition shows how new users found you for the first time. So that's good to know because you can ask it questions like, are they returning? What channels are driving the best traffic? If we look down into engagement, this reveals what people actually do when they get to your website. So you can start asking questions like, is anybody clicking the button on this URL page? Are people following any sort of call to action on this page? Yeah. Monetization, this identifies which products and tracks revenue health at a glance. So total revenue, transactions, average order value, that kind of thing. Retention down here measures whether users come back over time so that you can judge long-term audience value rather than just one-off visits. Your user kind of demographics. This means that we understand who our audience actually is. Our tech overview. This allows us to understand what devices, browsers, and operating systems people use so that we can prioritize what to optimize for. Our explore reports here allow us to answer specific questions that standard reports can't by combining any dimensions, metrics, or segments. So Ask Advisor uses a lot of these to piece things together so you know how things work. And then our funnel exploration shows where people are starting to drop off. So you can ask questions like, why does nobody check out on this page? And Ask Advisor would use a funnel exploration, for example, to discover that. So I think it's important for you to recognize that by understanding briefly what the different reports are, so the difference between acquisition reports and why we have a retention kind of metric, it means that we can start to ask even better questions in these kind of spaces. And over time, what you'll start to know is you'll start to recognize the reports that it pulls through for different questions. So it's good just to have a very high level knowledge of the different types of reports and a one sentence understanding of what that actually means when it comes to data collection an acquisition. So some prompts that you could try very, very quickly after this session is which channel drove the most conversions last month? How did new users compare this week versus last week? What is my top performing landing page by conversion rate? And why did sessions drop on a certain date? Just start asking those questions, seeing the data it pulls, and then asking it to give you insight on how to improve that or how to move past that perceived problem. So, the key kind of takeaways I want you to have from today's session is that retrieval is now automated. Yeah. Interpretation is still and will remain a human skill. Specific beats vague. So I want you to start asking questions that are specific because then it can give you a specific answer. And I want you to start small. So even if you just go in and go kind of, okay, I'm going to go to the home page. I'm going to check the insights. I'm going to have a look at my basic performance and look at what I can understand. That's incredibly more knowledge and power and understanding of what's going on your website than you sitting on this dashboard and going, I don't know what I can ask or understand from this data or how to access it. Yeah. So start small. It doesn't have to be a massive overhaul because what you're starting to do is understand what you can ask and what it can bring you back data-wise. I think I saw a chat. Great session, lots of insights. Will we have access to the recording? Yes, it gets recorded and then it goes on our YouTube channel. And the slides get mailed out, I think. Yes, they do. But has anybody got any questions about kind of what we've covered today? No? Okay.
Yeah, if
But
anyone
yeah.
has any questions, maybe put them in the chat, or I think there's a Q&A.
Ooh, how accurate are the responses? So they're up to the minute. So in Insights and in Ask Advisor, it will pull the most available up-to-date information to hand to you. It's not outdated information when you ask. I'm going to caveat here because I always do. It depends on how well you ask the question as well. So if it's a question that you need it to be accurate in terms of dates or in terms of things like that, you need to kind of be really specific if specificity is important, or else it will give you the most overall answer to the minute when you ask it. Importance of connecting GA4 to Google Console. I would, because then you get as much data access as possible. Lucille, is the information verified? What do you mean, Lucille, by that one? Do you mean in the way that it gives a response? Because when you ask a question in here, how do I improve my churn rate? What it will do in its response is give you all around the kind of the way it has come to that conclusion, and it will also give you all of the links it has referenced so that then you can double check that the response it has made is appropriate for you. I'll just quickly show you that, particularly around AI visibility. So AI visibility, so within the model itself, you can have a look at kind of what Google states around its use of AI. And the model is all based upon its own Gemini model. So when you look at kind of the information, it's all based around its own internal model. So yeah, if you look down here, it will give you all of the links that you can then kind of press, and then it will give you the way that you can verify its answer to you. Yeah. So it's always at the bottom, and it tells you exactly how it came to that answer. So it'll always show its thinking here. And if you don't agree with it, you can question it back. You can say, actually, I don't agree with that. This is what I thought, and then you can talk to it. You can go back and forth like we would within ChatGPT or Claude. Amazing. I think I've answered everything there. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. But yeah, we'll send out the presentation in the next couple of days. And if you would like more information, then please do email us at inquiries@oxfordpeg.com. If you wanted to find out more about the courses that we offer as well, then please do get in touch. And otherwise, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much, Robyn, for another really interesting webinar. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you found it interesting, and we hope to hear from some of you soon. Otherwise, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you for all the lovely thank yous in the message box. I look forward to the next one.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.